Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome to the Computer America Show. We are the Ashley Center, ready to talk. Thank you for joining us once again. Ben Cross having a great week, so it does have a wonderful show planned for you, where it is the but now that's resurrect. Our gamer show. This is where dedicated video games. Video games, Xbox, retro, otherwise, anything. Then on, but and of course, happy to have. We'll introduce, but no one better. So but before we a few things. That's where you'll find everything. Show notes. Also the entirety. While you're there, gonna be helpful. And the last thing. So, welcome on.
Hey, thank you very much for having me, Ben. It's great to be back after Gamer Tuesday has been kind of asleep for so long.
Absolutely. So, and but that have been, as if this year, general this year been a great year, video game controversy, but for just themselves, how many? It's been
I think I can say without exaggerating at all that 2017 might be the best year for games in maybe a decade, if not more.
and I mean, the games was in.
We've had a bunch of different fantastic games. We saw the launch of two new consoles, actually, not just the Nintendo Switch. We also saw the launch of the Xbox One X, which pretty decent machine in its own right. Can't hold a can. Yeah, sorry.
I didn't really count that because I kind of found that but like I don't like anything for Xbox One with dumbed down graphics and that.
That is correct. If you're getting the Xbox One X, you're not getting it for exclusive games. You're getting it for a better experience of the games you can already play.
Okay, no, and
yep.
And I think the fact that you don't. I'm Battleground. I'm looking at that you don't.
Right, that's absolutely true. I mean, you mentioned PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is probably the biggest game of the year, to be honest. It was so big, in fact, that we're going to see over the next couple of years, probably, we're seeing clones. Now, clones is kind of a harsh word. We're going to see games that use the same formula from Microsoft, probably from Nintendo. When a game like this makes such a big splash, the whole rest of the industry is going to follow it.
Exactly. And we have seen that with things like Fortnite and the like. I mean, it's okay. All in all, it's been a great year, and I think we should get into some of the details and more current events with gaming, and we'll talk about some of the past controversies, and we'll talk about the specifically one thing I want to talk about was my bone to pick with a trend in video games, which is definitely getting worse with looking at Destiny, and other games have done it like Assassin's Creed, that the idea that you cut up a game and sell parts of it and call it a finished game, and it's getting worse. But why don't we start with our first topic, and this is for all of you retro people out there, where we have Mega Man, and he hasn't been as central of a character as Mario, Zelda, so on and so forth, but he once did have that same kind of clout. So what's the story with Mega Man, and what is this 30th anniversary and Mega Man 11?
Well, you basically just summed it up right there. Mega Man's 30th anniversary is this year, and this is interesting for a couple reasons. One of those being that we haven't seen a new main series Mega Man game since 2010, I think it was. 7 years. 7 years since there was a new Mega Man game.
That's a while.
Yeah, it's quite a long time, especially for a character that's kind of iconic, to be honest. I mean, if you've been playing video games since the 80s or 90s, probably even after that, you're going to know who Mega Man is. He's probably about as recognizable as Mario or Sonic at this point.
He's pretty good. I mean, I think that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I remember having other people on the show and talking about it, and he kind of fell out of, from the wayside. And I'm sure you might know this better than I do, but he has something with his copyright issues with Sega, and something or other where they just couldn't utilize them for legal purposes, and he really just did not get the treatment he deserved in recent years.
Right. Mega Man's had a hard time of things in general. Ever since his games first started coming out, Mega Man in particular was hit very, very hard by game rentals. Blockbuster, you could go on a Friday, rent your Mega Man game for $10, play it through, finish it, give it back, you're done. You don't want to hold on to a Mega Man game. You don't need to. So that hurt Mega Man a lot back in the day back then. As time went on, we kind of saw a renaissance for Mega Man with Mega Man X, the Mega Man Zero series. He had a couple RPG series with Mega Man Battle Network and Mega Man Legends.
Mm-hmm.
And those did well, but they apparently didn't do well enough. Mega Man Legends in particular is kind of a sore spot for a lot of people who play games, because there was an effort to get Mega Man Legends 3 made, and it kind of fell through, and a lot of hope in seeing more Mega Man games has steadily dropped over the years thanks to things like that, to the point where if you had went back to January and told me that we would have heard that there was going to be a new Mega Man game in Mega Man 11 this year, I wouldn't have believed you.
Right. And so, I mean, but his brand has been kept alive. I think part of it definitely due to the what do you call it? The resurgence, just the baseline that you have with Super Smash Brothers Brawl and things like that, where his character is, of course, always featured, and now you have his own game with, hey, like you said, Mega Man 11, so it was Mega Man 11. But what are they doing to celebrate the 30th anniversary? Because they're releasing some games for free, I believe.
I don't believe it's going to be for free. For the 30th anniversary, we're seeing a few interesting things, actually. One of those is over the past couple of years, we've seen Mega Man collections released. There are two of them, one with the first 4 games, the other one with the last 4. And those are coming to the Switch, which, if you've ever played a Switch, you know this is an amazing system for this type of game. I mean, this kind of side-scrolling platformer works perfectly on the Switch, so that's great. Another interesting thing, and probably my favorite news, to be honest, maybe even more so than Mega Man 11, is we're going to see a Mega Man X collection, which will have every one of the 8 Mega Man X games on it, on the Switch, on the PC, on the PS4, on the Xbox One, on every platform that's relevant right now. It's fantastic. I mean, these are really solid games that Up until now, if you wanted to play them, you were looking at possibly dealing with scalpers, dealing with inflated retro game prices for some of them that are kind of rare, using emulation if you had to, and now they're going to be right there, right in front of you.
That yeah, and that's definitely a good thing. And I guess my next question to you, because when we do our our kind of our year in review for games, we're going to talk about Cuphead. It's a platformer. Got a lot of attention, and I would not be surprised if it snags a couple of awards in the months to come. But it showed that the idea of a side scroller, platformer, that kind of thing, it's people still can enjoy it, and critics like it, fans love it. Do you think, as a gamer, is Mega Man X at the collection or Mega Man 11, is this something worth picking up? And of course, you haven't reviewed it, you haven't tried it yet, but I mean, just to the best of your knowledge, do you remember this being a good series to play?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you talk about Cuphead. Cuphead is more to older games by the company called Treasure. They made games like Alien Soldier, where it's basically just a series of boss fights. Mega Man, meanwhile, has entire levels to explore. It's got a bunch of platform you can do. It's more than just the boss fights. But in general, yeah, Mega Man is a fantastic series. It has its highs and its lows. Mega Man X7, for instance, is kind of reviled among people who play games because it's not very good. The other interesting part about this too is last year we saw the release of a game called Mighty Number 9, which if you're familiar with Kickstarter, this kind of crowdfunding platform, Mighty Number 9 was one of the games that made a whole lot of money on Kickstarter. People donating to see a new Mega Man game, essentially, because it's been so long since we've had one. And Mighty Number 9 comes out, generally not popular. Nobody liked it. It wasn't very good. And then this year we get Capcom announcing a new Mega Man game for 1 that looks a lot like Mighty Number 9 was supposed to look for 2. It almost makes you think that shots have been fired, to be honest.
But in a good way. And this is something that I've really enjoyed this year, was that game companies really seem to be taking the games into their own hands. There's some other games that I want to talk about, but it really seems like we have had games. And I know it takes years to develop them, but this year, in particular, they're games that people have wanted, and game companies have been able to deliver this year. And hey, that's something I really, really have enjoyed. So, Mega Man 30th anniversary, crazy longevity for a franchise. It's as long as just about any of them. And hey, looks like it's finally getting another installment. So, last thoughts on Mega Man, in general?
It's extremely exciting. I mean, we are seeing this kind of renaissance in a lot of game series that we never thought would come back. I mean, again, if you had gone back a year ago and told me that we'd be playing a new Bubsy game this year, I wouldn't have believed you, and yet here we are.
Absolutely. And yeah, and actually carrying on with that train of thought, that's something else I want to talk about. I didn't have it written down anywhere, but this idea that retro gaming and listening to your audience, it really made a comeback. And one place that I definitely saw it was with Blizzard. I'm a huge fan of Blizzard, that's no secret, but something that they did an about face at BlizzCon this year, just a couple of weeks ago. But players for the longest time have been asking for old school vanilla World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft as it was released 13 years ago. They did an about face. They didn't give us a firm release date, but we're looking at 2019, 2020, somewhere around there. Blizzard is open to giving us a 15 or 16-year-old game in all of its original glory. We saw earlier this year StarCraft, and it's still popular in South Korea, but they remastered StarCraft and gave us the original game with updated graphics. We saw this with old school RuneScape, blah, blah, blah. I mean, in a lot of ways, game developers, I don't know if you get the same feeling, Corey, but game developers, it feels like they're finally listening to their audience. And while it may not be for everyone, at least the niches are big enough that they're starting to respond to it. And it's awesome.
It's very cool. I think to a very large degree, we're going to have to wait and see how many people actually play on the retro servers, because, it's one thing entirely to say that you want something. It's another entirely to pay the money for it when it's given to you. And I think a lot of people today might not remember quite how much of a slog World of Warcraft used to be.
I certainly do, and I completely agree with you that I think people have rose-colored glasses. They tend to forget the bad things and only remember, the really strong, good feelings. But I definitely do remember, spending 26 hours, my first time playing World of Warcraft, 26 hours, and I got to level 10, and it was awesome. But I know that it's not anywhere near what people are used to nowadays. But hey, at least they are responding to it, and they are, kind of doing this. And we've seen it with other games as well, and we're going to talk about some of those, in the later segment. But okay, so let's get back on focus, and how about we do this one? So just to be upfront, I've never played Star Citizen. I've done a bit of research in it. It's been a huge fan project. The people that pay attention to Star Citizen, support it, and play it are some of the most fanatical fans I have ever seen. But you have a topic here about, it may seem weird to people that when you say virtual land claims about something that, hey, you could just create more, something like that. But this matters to a lot of people, and it makes a real impact on the game. So give us a brief overview of Star Citizen and about this new development.
Star Citizen is a complicated topic. It's going to be difficult to make this brief, but basically, I mentioned a little bit ago about Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform. It's where you can go on to this site and see that somebody wants to make a project, and if you are really interested in this project being made, you can put some money into it. It doesn't have to be a lot of money. It can be $15, $20. You'll receive rewards based on how much you put in, and that can vary based on what the project is. And if the project's fully funded, they get the money. They'll make their project, ideally, and it'll come out, ideally, and you'll get whatever reward you wanted, ideally. I say ideally so much because that's not always how this works. It's quite often that Kickstarters will make a lot of money,
Right.
and they'll come out regardless. It's kind of one of the gambles you take when you're crowdfunding something, is that there really isn't a lot of accountability behind this kind of stuff. And when we're talking about Star Citizen is a project to make a big immersive spaceship simulator where you are a character that exists in this giant expansive world. You have a ship, you can trade, you can be a pirate, you can be a miner, you can run your own star station.
Open world to the nth degree is as I understand it.
Yeah, there's basically no limit to the amount of things that we've been told that you can do in Star Citizen. And I say that we've been told because at this point there really isn't much to Star Citizen as it stands. It's been years now. They've made over $170 million.
Whoa, $170 million?
$170 million has been given to Star Citizen.
Oh my God, you could buy a country and just be like, you know what, guys, we're just gonna role play in I don't know, whatever country you buy with. That is a lot of money.
That is a significant amount of money. Now the issue and why we're talking about this today is that a big part of the way that Star Citizen gets its money is, as I mentioned, you get rewards if you pledge to them. Pledge is the term that they use. So if I give you $100, you'll give me a little baby ship. And if I give you $1,000, maybe it's a nicer ship. And if I give you $10,000, maybe I get a whole lot of ships. And people love this. I apparently they keep giving money to them, $170 million. So somebody likes it.
I mean, it's definitely something that seems to be working. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, but at the same time, it's the antithesis of every other game that, a lot of other games that we can talk about today, one in just a minute, but pay to win. That seems like the definition of pay to win.
That's certainly a question that comes up. Now, there's been every indication that once you're playing Star Citizen, you can make money in the game and use it to buy ships. Now, how much time is it going to take you to make enough money in the game to buy a ship that somebody paid $1,000 for? That's a really difficult question. It's never really been answered. And lately, and the reason this is coming up now is it's not just ships anymore. Star Citizen recently began offering as a reward for pledging. I'm not going to say selling because that's not the term they use.
Right.
But offering as a reward for pledging little, essentially flagpoles that you can place down to claim land on planets in the game.
Flags. Good.
Flags, yeah. Now, the issue, of course, is, first off, they don't exist yet. You can pledge for them, and you can theoretically get them, but at this point in time, you cannot actually claim any land. You are pledging to this game, and they are offering you as a reward the ability to claim non-existent virtual land.
And this is going to get into actually it's going to bridge very nicely into Battlefront 2 that we're going to talk about in a moment, Destiny 2, PlayerUnknown's Battleground that we mentioned earlier. This kind of segues into each and every one of those, where it's taking that Kickstarter mentality, the thing that I can promise you the world, and then you pay me money for a part of that, and then eventually I'll get around to delivering that, or I won't, and public interest will wane, and it doesn't even matter anymore. Of course, Star Citizen seems to be its own monstrosity, because this is how they built this thing from the ground up. But this, we're seeing this in a lot of different games across the industry, but more specifically to Star Citizen. Why is this such a big deal with virtual flags and land parcels and paying for it? Are consumers seeing this, or at least the people who play the game, are they seeing this as a money grab? Are they seeing this as unfair? Why is this an issue?
Well, at Popzara, we don't like to cast aspersions on anybody, but the fact of the matter is that $172 million, I believe, into this project, and I want to say over 5 years at this point into this project, what we have at the moment is essentially an alpha tech demo, maybe not even an alpha. There is a game you can download, you can load it up, you can theoretically play it. It's not very playable right now. It doesn't run very well on most people's computers. There's not a lot you can do. But the fact of the matter is that people might start getting impatient that they have all this money and they haven't yet produced much of what could be considered substance. Now, Star Citizen is very interesting because it has a very kind of insular community. And there's a lot of ways you can look at this. It's possible that if you put a lot of money into Star Citizen, then you have a vested interest in wanting Star Citizen to do well. And as a result, if somebody comes around criticizing the game that you have so much of yourself invested in, you might be a little hostile, which makes it very difficult to look at Star Citizen and get kind of a clear picture of how the game is actually going, how people really think about it. Because you can go onto any Star Citizen article out there, and there's people saying, oh, no, this is a scam. This will never get made. And people saying, oh, no, you just don't understand crowdfunding. This is going to be fine. It's just transparent development. Games take a long time to make. They're expensive. So the exact status of this game is really hard to determine. But if it tells you anything, I don't have any money in Star Citizen.
If anything, it seems like there's no one on the other end, and this may have been by design. This may be what you get when you take the business side out of video games and you only put people who are passionate, the developer side. You only keep people on who really believe in the project. Maybe this is what happens when there's not a suit. They're telling you, come on guys, we gotta get this out the door. Deadlines or what have you. This is what happens when you don't have those evil suits telling you that, hey, we have to have something to show for our work.
I will agree that at some point there needs to be some accountability for what happens with all this money and all this time. And if that needs to be a suit, then maybe it needs to be a suit. With Mighty Number 9, we had essentially the same idea, a passion project led by people who really wanted to make something that they wanted to make, or at least that's what they said. And then the game comes out, and it's honestly not that good. It's generally just critically panned. The marketing was a disaster. And the response from the creators was, I believe the term they used with that, it was better than nothing. This game is not great, and it got all this money for free, but it's better than nothing. So again, I don't want to cast aspersions. It's not what we do with Popzara, but I don't have any money in it, and I'm just kind of going to wait and see.
Right, but you can only point to the facts, and I think we're gonna go ahead and segue this into PlayerUnknown Battleground, because there has been a little bit of controversy there with that game, and I'm not sure how closely you've been following the game. I'll give a brief overview, which is PlayerUnknown's Battleground. It's or PUBG for short. And it was developed originally by a user called PlayerUnknown, and hence PlayerUnknown's Battleground. And it was a riff off of, I don't want to say DayZ, H1Z1. And it was essentially a battle royale. That is the term for the kind of game it is. And you essentially, there's very specifics. You get dropped off, you skydive, you go find random loot that is completely randomized around the island there where you all fight it out. 100 contestants drop in, and the last one standing wins, or in some cases teams or what have you. But essentially, battle royale, last man standing wins. So when this was released, it was released through Steam Greenlight Project. And that is a service kind of like Kickstarter, a little bit maybe. Usually they're done in conjunction, where Steam Greenlight helps independent developers and smaller games essentially get people to purchase into beta testing and alpha testing for essentially helping games become a reality. Well, PlayerUnknown's Battleground is this weird game that in the streaming community and just in general on Steam itself, it's been a hugely popular and by all accounts successful game. Concurrent players have been some of the highest of any game. It has sold millions of copies, and I mean literally millions of copies, starting to sound like a little bit like Star Citizen, where they've made tons of money, they've had plenty of time, but when you really look at the game and its level of polish, I think is what most people would call it, there's a lot to be desired. It does not look like a AAA game, even though it has AAA money, and at this point, plenty of time to do it and plenty of the fan base and interest. It's just not that good, technically speaking. It's very interesting, very engaging. The audience loves it, so on and so forth. It's just, and by the way, folks, to another part of this weirdness I'm talking about, it's still in Greenlight. It's still technically in beta. It has not had a full release. And so, Corey, the part that was controversial, and I'd like your comment on, PlayerUnknown's Battleground, one of the most popular games of the year, was, I believe, nominated for Game of the Year by like IGN or something like that. But anyways, it was nominated for Game of the Year. People raised a fuss because do you think a game that is strictly in beta and has been for a year should be eligible for Game of the Year versus others that had to go through full development and have a full actual release? I mean, beta, the purpose of beta is that things will change. This is not the finished product. And it's nominated for Game of the Year. It's they're saying it's one of the best games of the year. It's not even technically a game yet.
We run into a lot of issues when we're talking about this particular subject, perhaps foremost of which is what exactly does a game need in order to be Game of the Year? What makes something Game of the Year? Is it the importance of the game to games as a medium? Because if that's the case, then it sounds like Battlegrounds is actually significant. I mean, we're already seeing clones being announced, like the Darwin project for the Xbox One X. So it's made an impact. A great way to measure impact is to check the Android App Store and see how many clones of it there are. And there are tons of knockoffs of Battlegrounds on the App Store right now. Another question is, you compare Star Citizen and Battlegrounds, but Battlegrounds at this point, I've played quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
And it's a fully playable game. I mean, this is an entirely full-featured game. They put this in front of you. They say, you're going to jump on an island. You're going to fight people. When there's one of you left, you win. That's what they sell you, and that's what you're getting. In terms of polish, you can maybe use some work. They're definitely making progress on that front. But the other fact of the matter is, this is millions and millions of people who agree that this is a solid game. They like it a lot. So if you're going to ask me whether this could be Game of the Year, yeah, I think it's entirely possible. If a lot of people love playing it, if they think it's fun, if it's clearly making some waves in the industry, if it's going to affect the games we see over the coming years, yeah, that could be Game of the Year. I wouldn't pick it, but it could be.
I take one second. All right, I take complete offense to that because other games have to essentially leave beta, and I feel like PlayerUnknown's Battleground has been able to avoid a lot of criticism, a lot of valid criticism by sticking to Steam Greenlight, by sticking to beta, by essentially saying, oh, well, it's like, well, what happened? It's like, why is it when I try to open a door, it glitches out, my player runs in place for 3 seconds, and I get shot in the back? And it's like, well, because, we're in beta and we're working on it. Or, why can't we vault out of Windows? It's like, oh, that's on our test server. It's coming. We're in beta. Like, they have been able to deny a lot of valid criticism by keeping the title. But Corey, we'll be right back. The music means we're going to take a break. Everyone else out there, stay tuned. Computer America Gamer Tuesday, back in action. We'll be right back. More of this right after the break. Here we go.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show, 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on with Gamer Tuesday and Mr. Cory Galliher. And if you missed any part of our previous conversation, you can check that out in podcast form wherever podcasts are heard. And Cory, I definitely wanted to give you last word on this, but of course we're talking about PlayerUnknown's Battleground, the idea that a game, even though it's very impactful, obviously has a huge fan base, but even though it's never had a full release date, should it be eligible for Game of the Year? And you contended yes, because, hey, impact and Game of the Year should mean if it has an impact on the gaming ecosystem, conversation, what have you. And I contended no, it wasn't, because, hey, they've been able to deflect criticism that others can't because of their designation. And I wanted to give you the last word on that.
Talking about early access as a program, which for those of you who aren't familiar, early access is the idea that you can take a game that's not quite finished, you can put it on for sale, and people who are really interested in your game can play it before it's technically finished, which is the situation with Battlegrounds. When we're thinking about early access, the important thing, and this is also relevant for Star Wars, we're going to talk about in a little bit, is the practices that the industry gets into are the ones that people will pay for. And the fact of the matter is that early access would have died its death a long time ago if people didn't buy early access games, or at least have as little of a problem with them as possible to purchase them in the state that they're in. So when we're talking about Battlegrounds, I think you get a pretty good product, right, as it stands. I mean, certainly it's shaped up quite a bit since it launched. The door thing you mentioned, for instance, that doors would sometimes glitch out and not work. It's not really the case anymore. That's improved. A lot of early access games don't necessarily do that, but this one has. So do I like the program? Do I like the idea that they're selling games in alpha, beta, or even that the terms alpha and beta don't really mean anything anymore? Not really. But I'm also willing to accept that sometimes it does work. A stop clock is right twice a day. And in this case, it was right when it comes to Battlegrounds. It was released early. It gave you a full, complete experience right from the start. And that experience has gotten better. And soon, I believe early next year, we're going to see the full release of Battlegrounds, including an Xbox One X version.
Yeah, as soon as they do the official release, which believe me, I'm truly looking forward to, it is going to be available through Xbox and the Microsoft Store. It's going to be, I believe, like a Microsoft exclusive or something like that. But
it is.
Yeah, and also Tencent, which is a huge Chinese gaming company, is doing a mobile port of it as well. I mean, this game, for all of my gripes about being in an alpha, early release, beta, what have you, it's going to hit the ground, like when it finally does cross that finish line, it's going to be on almost every handheld device or computer you can imagine. So it's going to be impressive when it finally releases. So anyways, that was that, but it does lead us into another discussion about Battlefront. And folks, if you have been living under a rock, stay under the rock, because it is safe. It is drama-free under there, compared to the amount of frustration people have felt over Battlegrounds, or Battlegrounds, Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 2, produced by EA. And yeah, so Corey, I'll let you go ahead and give an overview, but it's been a tumultuous, to say the least, release of this game.
So Star Wars is it's not really just a nerd thing these days. This is a thing that pretty much everybody is familiar with, and everybody loves Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, and so on. And Star Wars video games, of course, have been a thing since the days of the NES, probably before that. And the most recent one is Star Wars Battlefront 2 from Electronic Arts, which is a giant multiplayer shooter. And they released another one of these last year. Middling success. Wasn't the greatest game ever, but it wasn't awful.
It was okay.
Yeah, it was okay. I didn't hate it. Anyway, the issue when we're talking about Battlefront 2 in particular is the idea of loot boxes. And loot boxes are when to get better abilities for your character, like to run faster or to shoot more accurately or do more damage, you have to open what is essentially one of those Cracker Jack boxes. You don't know what you get until you open it.
Right.
It could be great. It could be terrible. You don't know. And that's, I don't really know why that would fit into a shooter in the first place, but if it were there by itself, you know what, I can get over that. That's fine. The issue with the ones in this game are twofold. Number one, this is the only way to get any further in this game. To improve your character, you have to open these loot boxes. Number two, you can buy them with real money. And in fact, that's pretty much what you were supposed to do. You could technically get them with money you earn in the game. That's not really going to happen. You're going to have to buy them with real money to get ahead if you want to play this effectively.
So, yeah, and, just a couple of points to, flesh out the problem with this was that other games have completely done this. They have done this, and it has become, at this point, standard that loot crates are a thing. It's been in League of Legends, one of the largest MOBAs out there. Overwatch, one of the largest first-person shooters. I saw it in Call of Duty World War II. The new game. It's definitely in those. Loot boxes have been around for a number of years, and the largest titles make a lot of money by doing them. Why this was a problem with EA and Star Wars Battlefront 2 was what you're saying. Character progression and account progression and just becoming a better player was strictly done, or it is achieved through these Cracker Jack boxes, as you said, randomized loot. And in other games, again, such as Overwatch, League of Legends, what have you, yes, even PlayerUnknown's Battleground, they have it too. These prize boxes, these loot boxes, have only cosmetics, have only things that augment the visuals of your character. They do not lead to gameplay improvements. It's something that you can add, make yourself stand out, and that's it. But here's where, I feel, and Corey, I hope you feel the same, that's where EA really went wrong. I mean, we'll talk about the rate of actually acquiring these things, but they went beyond cosmetics. They went, actual progression of the game and made it a paywall to, kind of like a mobile game that you expect on your phone or in the App Store. They made it, pay to advance.
Right, absolutely. And the issue with this takes several forms. I mean, first off, you're paying to advance, which in other terms means you're paying to win, which means that if you're playing in a match against somebody and they beat you, did they win because they're better or did they win because they paid more than you? That's a problem. I mean, you're always going to wonder in that case. If the system is there at all, if you can at any point buy power in the game with money, then you will never actually know if you lost to somebody because they paid more than you, which it's not satisfying. You don't like that. Doesn't feel good. That's not fun.
We actually saw this with another title, Diablo 3, when it first came out. There was something called the Real Money Auction House. It was, the auction house and the Real Money Auction House. You could put items on the auction house for a certain amount of gold, and that gold had a currency conversion rate to real US dollars. And it got to the point where if you wanted the best pieces of gear in Diablo 3, you had to pay upwards of $100, $150 a piece of gear. And, the amount of gold that you have to earn in game was unachievable compared to the, $150. That's a lot, but people can afford it. If you had to pay 10 billion gold, that would take you months to earn, and that was unachievable. And
sure, absolutely.
And just real quick, I mean, what that led to was them actually removing that system, because it did lead to that situation of, if you want to be the best, if you want to be good at this game, it's going to be a huge money sink. And I feel like that's the backlash that we're getting from EA and Battlefront 2.
Sure, absolutely. And again, people have stated their problems with this. The fact that you can buy power makes the game less fun. I completely agree with that. The fact that this is a Star Wars game. Star Wars, if you're not familiar with the series these days, is actually a Disney property, which means that that there is currently technically a Disney game that would like you to gamble to get more powerful characters, which, yeah, I mean, I could see where people would have a problem with that. On the other hand, I like to look at things from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that's usually phrased to us when we're talking about these loot boxes and the ability to buy power in a game, it's not necessarily that you're buying power to be better than somebody else. It's that people have two resources, the two most significant resources in your life, generally speaking. Number one is time. Number two is money. People who have a lot of one might not have as much of the other. So if you, Ben, can play for 10 hours a day, and we end up in a match together, and you just beat me completely, I mean, are you beating me because you are a more skilled player, or because you have played for longer? That's the question.
Right.
Likewise, if I can spend $10 and be on the same level as you in terms of power, then we can compete on the same level, and then we'll know who's better, which is great. I mean, that's a significant part of games, especially competitive games like this one, to know who's better. So do I appreciate the idea that you're not shutting out people who have jobs, who have lives, who have families? I like that, actually. I think that's a good thing. I think we are seeing the demographic for video games steadily shift toward people who have jobs, who have families, who are married, who have kids. And maybe not everybody has the time to play 10 hours a day. And if they want to spend their money, which they probably have more of, on skipping this sort of grind in a game, then yeah, that's completely okay. The issue with Battlefront 2 in particular is that that's not really so much the option. The rate at which you were able to get this currency to buy these loot crates in the game without spending real money was exceedingly slow, to the point where it just wasn't tenable after a while. You would have to play dozens of hours to even unlock the ability to play as Darth Vader, one of the most iconic characters in the series, and you couldn't beat him until you played.
I believe it was, I think it was 40 hours. That was what someone broke it down to. That was the number floating around through all the articles. Was it took 40 hours or or like $20 to unlock this. And when you think about the money compared to the time spent, which one would you rather spend, $20 or 40 hours? And I think a lot of people would obviously say $20 is completely worth it if that saves me 40 hours. That's the problem, though. If you swing that pendulum too far in favor of money, you look like a greedy company that wants you, that entices you in every form to spend money rather than play their game.
Right, absolutely. And on the other hand, if you shift the pendulum all the way toward time, you're going to make a lot less. And EA, I mean, video games are a business, and EA does have shareholders to answer to. That's just the fact of the matter. It's how businesses work. Battlefront 2 in particular is interesting because it does something that I never thought I'd see happen, which is people who play a lot of video games. I don't like the term gamer. I don't tend to use it, but people who play a lot of video games got upset enough about this and raised enough of a stink and got enough attention that this system's actually gone now. What we're talking about is a system that's not actually in the game anymore. If you buy Star Wars Battlefront 2 right now, you cannot purchase loot boxes with real money. That system is gone.
At the moment.
At the moment. They said they're going to bring it back, but I don't think this has ever happened before. We've seen time upon time upon time of people getting outraged over things in video games. It's been over digital rights management like Denuvo. It's been over there's a game Spore a few years back from Will Wright that had a big controversy around it. Still sold like hotcakes. What we've seen over and over again is that people can get mad about something, but it doesn't get changed because the game still sells. In this case, it was changed. I'm not sure about sales yet. Nobody is. We'll see how that goes. But typically these things don't change. And yet here we are. They've taken out the paid loot boxes. The loot boxes themselves are still there, but you have to get them with in-game money. we've seen them actually just today, I believe today or yesterday, they've increased the amount of money you get in the game so you can get loot boxes faster. Something clicked somewhere for EA on this. They decided to take a step back. That's not something EA does. This is unprecedented.
Yeah, and there's a reason why I think EA is often voted as, well, it's high between like EA and like Comcast as for which is the most reviled.
Worst company in America is the one you're thinking about. That was a award given out by the site Consumerist, which hilariously enough actually shut its doors last month. So they can't be worst company in America again because that doesn't exist anymore.
All right, so that's good. So no one's going to be the worst company in the world. It's all going to be up for grabs. But EA, they there's a lot of animosity to how EA treats their titles because there have been other Star Wars games that have been very successful, very revered in gaming circles. Personally, is Jedi Academy. I love that game.
That's an excellent game. Yep,
absolutely. But the way that they put their treatment on it, and I think the loot boxes was a step too far. And you're right, it was one of the first times, and it showed, hey, consumers, even before it was time to put the money down, they actually had a voice. They had something to say about the system.
Yeah, it was getting to the point where it was almost kind of an in-joke amongst people who play a lot of games that everybody gets mad about everything, but what does it accomplish? Nothing. Here it accomplished something. I mean, unquestionably, something happened. My guess is that somebody at Disney heard that people were comparing their game to gambling, and Disney's not cool with that, so they call EA, they raise a ruckus. Oh no, no more loot boxes. Right. Do I think this is going to be a sea change throughout the industry? Absolutely not.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I think, number one, the loot boxes are going to come back to Battlefront 2 without question. Number two, we're going to see more loot boxes. I keep in touch with a guy named Matt Piscatella from the NPD, the National Purchase Diary, who chronicles game sales. And one of the things that he said quite a bit recently that I've taken to heart is that we're not going to see the retail price of games go up. We want that to stay low because then people are going to buy more games and have more chances to buy loot boxes, which are vastly more profitable than selling more copies of a game.
Which I agree, but this is going to segue us into our next point about Destiny 2. And I definitely want to talk about Destiny 2. There's loot boxes to a point within Destiny. They call bright engrams that give you cosmetics, but not actual advantages within the game. But you're right that I'm hoping the price of retail games don't go up. But that's what I want to talk about with Destiny 2 and also with Assassin's Creed Origin, where it did in such a subtle way that I think some people noticed, but they're really hoping, consumers don't notice. And I wanted your experience with Destiny 2 specifically because that's the one I've played. I put a significant numbers of hours in the first 4 days, and then I never touched it again. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind switching over to Destiny 2?
That's completely fine. So Destiny 2, a big shooter game from Bungie, who are the makers of the Halo franchise, that's one of those franchises, even if you don't play video games, you probably know what Halo is.
Yeah.
And big shooter game has an interesting system in it, which are called bright engrams. And what that is, it's another form of these loot boxes that we just talked about. In this situation, these loot boxes only have different colors for your character. You can make your gun look different. You can make your ship look different. It doesn't really affect your gameplay in any way. So that's kind of whatever. The issue with Destiny 2 recently, as with Battlefront 2, you can ostensibly get more of these loot boxes by playing the game. The issue is that you would get these loot boxes by filling up an experience point meter, and you'd get experience points when you killed enemies, when you did stuff in the game. What we didn't know is that after a certain point each week, getting enough experience points, the amount that you got would go down. So essentially, if you're familiar with data capping, the way that data throttling works on your cell phone, if you use too much data, they slow it down. This is what was happening with these experience points, and it was very, very plainly a way to encourage you to pay money for these loot boxes.
Well, and but you say very, very plainly, but that was part of the problem where it was not obvious.
Exactly.
It was surreptitious, and that was a big problem.
Yeah, so this meter that I just mentioned actually would stop reporting the numbers of experience points that you got accurately. The game was lying to you, in other words. That's the easiest way to put it, is the game would lie to you. And people were upset. I mean, this is not something that was obvious. It didn't come up at first. People had to like kind of do experiments and see how it was working to really understand what was happening. And the fact of the matter is the game was lying to you. It would say you got X amount. You were not actually getting X amount. You were getting less and less and less and less over time. Again, to encourage you to purchase more of these loot boxes by convincing you that the rate at which you were getting them was too slow.
Yeah, yeah. And so you felt like you were making progress, but at the same time, through the efforts of individuals who play the game, they found that and one thing that Destiny really provides you is a chance to grind, is the chance that if you wanted to, you can do the same activity over and over and over again in hopes of better loot, better gear, these cosmetics. Destiny, that is its bread and butter. You can run multiple things multiple times. And that was what was being nerfed, and that was what it was lying to you about. So it made a lot of people mad. That wasn't exactly the controversy that I wanted to talk about, but that was a recent one that they have since changed. They said that system was hidden behind the scenes. It was to help make sure that the player experience, people weren't getting things too fast or too quickly or too slowly. But hey, in the end, they found out about that. The one that I want to talk about was, and this may just be personal. I am mad. I'm angry, Corey. I'm angry that they already have an expansion out, and it's only been like 2 months. They have an expansion called The Curse of Osiris, and the game's only been out for 2 months. Maybe 3 or 4 if you count the console release before the PC release. But this seems, way too early for a $20 expansion for something that, the game, it doesn't really have that much content to begin with.
Well, first off, I gotta say, I have never been angry at a video game. A video game has never made me feel anything but hunger.
Dude, you have to get mad. You have to take it personally whenever these games, do something you don't like. That's what you have to do.
Got to throw a controller, absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, when it comes to this expansion stuff, I think that I think it's not a very well kept secret that a lot of times, yes, there are parts of games that are chopped out and pieced together to sell as DLC after the fact. I think that this is something that people won't say. And I think that's largely because there wouldn't be any advantage to saying it. Like, oh, hey, we cut out part of our game to sell you later. Yeah, that's gonna fly. It's not.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear when it does happen. We actually saw it a few times back in the Xbox 360 and PS3 days when there were games like, let's see.
Well, and the most recent one I mentioned it was Assassin's Creed's Origin, where they actually, with the digital exclusive, the $80 one instead of the $60 one, you got access to a secret bonus extra mission that would give you a bit more storyline, and it was only playable by the 80. Like, that's just taking part of the game that should have been available to everyone and paywalling it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I mean, as games become more and more expensive to make, take more and more time, require bigger and bigger teams, this becomes kind of a question. It's going to become, do we want games that are this expansive, look this good, have this much going on, or do we want to keep paying $60 and only $60 for the full breadth of content? The two can't really survive together, I'm afraid. In the indie space, this is not necessarily the case quite so much. Indies have their own methods of getting funding, such as crowdfunding, early access, and so on, which have as many problems, actually. There is no side. Yeah, there is no side of the games industry that you can really get into without experiencing things like this. And what I've said about this quite a bit, as this has come up, is either you go with the flow or you get out of the pool. That's the fact of the matter these days. If these kind of predatory practices are going to be there, and you either learn to deal with them, or I'm afraid there's not much in gaming that's going to change.
Gaming has definitely become more so in 2017 and years to come. It definitely has become a business more than a passion for a lot of people. I mean, we mentioned way at the beginning that 2017 was one of the best years. There are games worth playing, but there are also games which we have talked about for about half an hour now, that really highlight the fact that this is a business and there is a way to make money off of it. And fortunately or unfortunately, these practices do make money compared to the traditional way games are consumed. So it's going to have to be up to the consumer, but the deck, I feel like, the loot box is really stacked against you. So, but with that being said, and Cory, hopefully you can join us again another month, because we have a lot of topics that we could definitely get further in depth to. But in these last 5 minutes, Cory, I did want to give you the opportunity to go with, some of your highlights for the year of 2017. Maybe people haven't checked them out yet, and some of the low points of 2017, the best and worst games of 2017, just really quick. I know we can't get into detail, but
man, I gotta knock it out fast, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Best games of the year: Super Mario Odyssey and the Switch, Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild on the Switch and the Wii U. If you have a Switch, and you should if you like games, these are must-haves. Assassin's Creed Origins on the PC, PS4, Xbox One, fantastic game. I honestly think it's better than Mario or Zelda. It's a hot take. People are gonna have complaints, but no, I think that's the best game of the year. Persona 5 on the PS4, really solid game. Worst games of the year. There were honestly not a lot of bad games this year. If we're talking about disappointment, I think Destiny 2 probably ranks up there. It was a game that basically took the Destiny 1 formula, redid it, added some new content, not a lot. There's not a whole lot to it. It's a little bit disappointing. What else springs to mind is especially not good? Akiba's Beat on the PS4. You've probably never heard of it. Please continue not hearing about it. It's terrible.
One that I picked out that was one of the worst was Mass Effect Andromeda.
I'm afraid we're gonna have to we have to agree to disagree on that one. I thought Andromeda was actually better than the credit that it got.
Did you? Because I when I played through it, it's another issue of a game that you expect and the level of polish, kind of like I had with Battlegrounds, where it just it just didn't stand up to the height of Mass Effect 3 and the interim. It just didn't do anything for me. It didn't do anything for me.
Actually, I forgot one of my games of the year. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, definitely up there.
All right, yeah, all right, that's fair. So let's see some of the other titles again, just real quick. Let's see what you think of these. You didn't mention Cuphead.
Cuphead is good. Cuphead had the issue of releasing during a year full of amazing games. If Cuphead had been released in 2016, that would have been Game of the Year 2016 easily.
All right, and one that I personally really liked, I've only put about 250 hours into it, but City Skylines. It took the I don't want to say flop of SimCity, but it took the dumbed down version of SimCity that EA put out and essentially said, all right, folks, for those of you who like SimCity because it was complicated and you could get into the nitty gritty, City Skylines really delivered on an on an unfulfilled promise by another developer. I really like City Skylines.
City Skylines, I don't believe released this year, but it's definitely been improved over the past year.
Yeah, let's see. My bad. It was released for Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in 2017, but PC in 2015. You are absolutely right. So there. But let's see. One other game I did want to mention. I know VR has not taken off this year as we had hoped it would, or at least I had hoped it would. But sure. One VR game that I did see a lot of and I did really enjoy it, Star Trek Bridge Crew.
I haven't had a chance to try it, though. If we are talking about VR, Doom VFR, fantastic game. Resident Evil 7 as well. Both VR games that really convince you that VR can work. It just maybe needs a little bit more time in the oven.
Just needs a little bit more time, and we'll definitely be seeing that. And then the last one, Just Dance 2017, Game of the Year. We all agree, Just Dance 2017. Glad it finally got released. Oof,
well, it's got Beep Beep I'm a Sheep in it. What more could you want?
An actual game, but. Let's see. There are many other games. Did you ever have a chance to check out For Honor?
For Honor lasted me about a week or two. Didn't really have the support that it needed. It didn't take off the way you might have thought it would. For a game that needs competition to do well, people just kind of fell off of it.
All right, so For Honor for a week. So, but Cory, with that being said, the music means that we are just done here. If people want to find out more about any of your writings, because as I understand, you contribute regularly to a number of publications.
I do. Popzara.com is one. WELL Red Mage REDMAGE.com is another one where you can find my work.
All right, very, very well said, and we'll include links to that and all anywhere you want in the show notes, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. This was Gamer Tuesday. Happy it's back. Been a long time since I was able to talk about my favorite thing, video games, and just not enough time. But Cory, thanks once again for coming on. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, again, thank you.
And thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So everyone out there, music means that we're done, and be sure to tune in tomorrow as we have on, as I understand it, Mr. Mike Cermak. That's right, he is our Computer America correspondent. Great guy, and of course we'll be talking all things tech news here tomorrow. So until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.